questions. We've got 12 minutes questions, then we're going to go for lunch. Otherwise, we'll be all literally wobbling. So, a couple of questions online. Are we victim to tech companies selling the dream, end users having a lack of clarity, and the tech companies then locking us into 3-year SaaS deals, essentially? So, Andy, I think that was one for you.
Yes. Whose fault is it? Oh, I've got to feed him. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like buying anything, isn't it? There's snake oil out there all over the place. I think last year I talked about the snake oil of AI and about over 800 companies in the prop tech world selling us stuff that's AI empowered. What it comes down to is what I said, is focus on what is it you're trying to achieve, your goals, your business goals, what are we trying to get to, and then ask them to prove the business case. And then you'll start to be on the right path. If you believe the snake oil without knowing what your business case is, you'll get to a place of having a tech and going, as I think we heard earlier, 3/4 of projects not delivering an ROI, because most tech projects I see, they haven't even worked out what their ROI really is. They've done something to make it look good in a report internally to get approval, but it's not really what they really are trying to achieve. And you've got to be true to yourself. What is the actual value of this? And then work back from there.
Thank you very much. And then I've got a question for Sunil, and it is, are decarbonisation standards realistic?
Yes. So they're not easy, and again, they require embedding into the way that the organisation operates and what it does. There are trade-offs, there are some difficult conversations. And those are the conversations where you do need to have the senior management team who understand the implications of the decisions that they're making. We've had conversations, so that we get involved a lot with some of the C-suite, both in terms of upskilling, but also the conversations. Most recent one has been on electric vehicles. And there's been an interesting conversation about the uplift in prices associated with electric vehicles and being able to push through to meet up with targets. But there's also been an interesting one about insurance levels and premiums that are being paid. And because that was unknown at the time for being set, that put some pressure onto budgets. So there was a question around what did that mean for the organisation in terms of what they wanted to achieve and do versus some of the immediate cost pressures that are taking place. There isn't a simple answer to that. There isn't a black and white response to that. It is down very much to what does the company want to do, where are its ambitions, and is it going to stand by some of those commitments it's made?
And
I could sell you a SaaS product for that. No,
on a 3-year deal or 5. What are the get-out clauses? And part B to that question as well was, during the economic uncertainty, how do we adapt? Because if we've got the targets to hit and then money is becoming the challenge, what I think the planet should come before money, but, you know, where do we stand with all that?
Yeah. So, again, a lot of this comes down to how this feeds into the business. There's a lot of what we're doing, which is trying to connect this within the forward strategy for an organisation. This is about the resilience of the organisation. There's some connection, not so much in the UK, but we're starting to see it in some of the other global territories where you've got cheaper insurance rates and lending rates that come through off the back of having some of these targets and commitments being made. We do have cheaper costs associated with audits and assurance. So if you can start to take off even 5 or 10% of those costs, that's more than going to pay for some of these programs to happen. So it's about looking at the subject not within its silo, but what's its relevance for the organisation as a whole, and how do we incorporate it as a business change activity rather than just something which is an FM-driven activity.
Yeah. Any more questions in the audience? Let's get one for Stan. Stan. Thinking your dad now. Let's get one for Gordon and for Mark, and also one for Steve. Yeah, go on over here.
Mine's actually for Sunil again. But just a question around decarbonisation. Obviously a big focus on mitigation, climate change, but actually adaptation to climate change has become more important. And how do you think that pivot will affect how people spend their money in future years? Do you think there'll be a pivot from mitigation to adaptation?
Yeah.
I do have a second question if I could, just follow up. It was around Scope 3. Scope 3 is obviously a huge factor in total emissions, and a lot of sustainability legislation doesn't have the teeth behind it for small organisations to kind of mandate that they actually undertake any of the kind of decarbonisation. How do you see that impacting the FM industry? Because a lot of services are delivered by small organisations.
On the mitigation adaptation piece, so a lot of what we've seen recently has been around optimisation of buildings. So again, going back to, there's lots of products that you can sell, sensors that you can add in that tells you that you're going to decarbonise your building and cut your energy dramatically. They never tend to work either. But there has been a focus on how do we improve the way that our building runs, and that goes back to normal run times. I've been again doing this for a long time. We still have challenges around when does your building start and when does it stop. Simple things that we had a building recently where its start-up was at 2:30 in the morning and people arrived in at 8 o'clock in the morning. They wanted to know why their energy bill was high. That has moved on, so that is a short-term response. That is about having a quarter-by-quarter response. We have a target that needs to be met. Adaptation is your longer-term issue and activity, and that's much more about forward planning. We're talking about changes that might take place within the building that you need to have resilience for in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So, again, an organisation that we worked with, we found there was a trigger point when it got to around 30 degrees where the energy consumption in the building went up by 9% because it needed additional cooling within the building because the entire system was running full at that point. So then we were able to model what's the likelihood of timelines above that 30 degrees and the costs associated. Plus also you can't maintain your equipment when it's running full pelt, so you've got a direct risk attached to that. All of a sudden, that was very prevalent for the business to be able to make a decision on what they needed to do, because they could see and understand what the likely implications were going to be for that business. They owned the property, so it was in their own desires to actually be able to change that. For a lot of organisations, it's about understanding what is those implications. If you are talking about not being able to work in a building because you cannot provide sufficient cooling in there, building regulations only designed for 28 degrees external temperature, 32 at maximum. If you run a building for more than 4 days above 32 degrees, systems start to fail. So therefore, above 32 for more than 4 days becomes your critical time frame. Understanding that means that you've got building failure directly in that. So putting it in that frame, you've got a risk. It's down for a company to understand what risk they're willing to accept for the running of that building. You can shut the building down, everyone works from home. We've done that, we know it works. But does an organisation want to go through that exercise? So that's that adaptation piece, and there's lots of ways of how you resolve it and how you do that, and that's very bespoke to a company, but understanding that risk threshold first is the first bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Got a question from Mel for Steve.
I'm here. I'm just hidden in the corner, unlike me. Steve, thanks for your speech. It was really interesting. I hear what you're saying about the fact that you've got minimal people from outsourced providers coming onto the programmes. With all these other things that we're saying that people need to spend their money on, sustainability, AI, the tech, whatever it might be that's coming up, how do you think we can ask organisations to prioritise their leadership and development budgets? There's a challenge.
Well, I think the thing that I say to people, Mel, is we talk about this as all about people, but I'd ask you all, if you're in-house, how much of your budget is people related, whether it's guarding, cleaning, maintenance, and it's the same with service providers. 80% of people's budgets is about people, and that's how I would start. You know, we can talk about the cost, but actually the majority of the budget is about people. And I'd follow that up with something else, and it probably goes to Andy's question online earlier on about educating procurement people. I hope there's no procurement people in the room, by the way, but if there are, I do think it's incumbent on us to educate the people. When I see prices being screwed down by clients, I just think, actually, the price is the price. Yeah, 80% of any service provider's price is going to be about the people. And the price is determined not by the service provider, but it's determined by the market. That's basic economics. If you go back to 1776, Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, he talked about the invisible hand. The invisible hand's driving the market. So when I get, as Lucy probably does, tenders and I evaluate tender prices, I think they should all be similar. If the specification is good, if everybody knows what the market is pricing on, the prices should be similar, because 80% of the price is going to be driven by the market, whether it's national living wage or whether it's an electrician's price in London or Manchester. The price is driven by the market. And if 80% is driven by the people, it's the same with materials and consumables. If I'm a cleaning company, I'm buying my materials and consumables from Kimberly-Clark, Bunzl, all of the same providers. The price is driven by the market. Even the profit. David talked this morning about the profit expectations in this market. Service providers are all earning similar profits. How do I know that? Because I can look at the annual reports. That's driven by the market. The variable is the overhead. So those four components, the biggest part is the people. And I come back to we need to educate people about that. But coming back to your question, it's power to the people, because ultimately I look at everything, everything that Andy talked about, everything that Mark and Duncan, Lucy, Sunil talked about, and it does come down to the people. And I don't know what the future's going to be like in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, when we're going to have that building that Andy talked about that runs itself. But I also think that we are human beings. And people want to be together. They want to break the bread. They want to, it's like the old days of the Roman Forum, coming together. So, yeah, I think we could probably have buildings that run themselves in the future. But I'll be brown bread by then, right? So I just think I only had a brief for the next 5 years. So
it's your kid's problem by that point.
I hope that answers your question, Bill, and also Andy Wilson's question online earlier about the price and driving the cost down. The price is the price.
So if you're a small FM business, what's that one FM standard that I need to work towards to? Because there are N number of standards, and when you fill a public sector form, there are another 100 compliance that you need to go through. So what's that one FM standard that you suggest that an FM company should work towards to?
I'm also in that boat now after years of being in the corporate world, so I get that. I get that question entirely. For me, I'd start at the top. I'd start with the 41,000 standard. There are other elements to it. I think we're at level 12 now, aren't we? With various initiatives that are out there in the ISO world. But I would start at the entry level. What confuses me with all of this, and yeah, I'd admit I'm a bit of a convert to this. I'm not known for following rules all the time. But I got involved in standards work 10, 12 years ago, and it's kind of really grown on me. But in any other industry, why wouldn't you do it? And if you were to look at this another way, everyone got ISO 9001 standard now, isn't it? You haven't got it, you can't go very far. Why aren't you doing that with an FM badge on it? Which is ultimately, I'm oversimplifying it a little, but ultimately that's what it is. You go into that entry level, and it's a lot of it now is about maturity. You know, you can look at whether you're a level 1, level 2, or a level 5, a level of maturity. You look at what Sunil does for a living. You can also apply it to technology as well. You can be going down a path, but if you've got those core fundamentals in place, those building blocks, you're going to get the rest right over time, aren't you? If you stick to it rigidly. So yeah, from my perspective, that would be my advice to anyone asking that question.
And Steve wants to add as well.
Could I jump in there quickly? Yeah, 41,012. Development of effective agreements. That to me is the best standard. I like the other one. There's one there about the 41,001 developing management systems, but that works on management systems for 9,001, 18,001. There's a great one about developing a strategy.
Yeah.
But for me, ISO 41012, developing an effective FM agreement, is the best that I think is in the industry. I get Stan Mitchell to do guest lectures at the university program, and he even says that that's the best. Why? Because it actually states in there that the facility manager should own the procurement criteria. What I see is that facility managers for far too long have let go to their procurement colleagues. They've let go of the procurement criteria. The procurement criteria, to me, is understanding what's the scope of works, what's in and out of scope. It's understanding the KPIs. What do you want as KPIs? It's understanding the service levels. It's also about understanding the market. So for me, 41,012, when it talks about a 10-stage process of procurement, of agreements, FM agreements, that to me is a fantastic standard. And even if you've got work in-house, it's asking you to go through this process of setting the expectations, alignment to the strategic vision of the business. It's asking you to go through all of that, but it says the facility manager shall own the procurement criteria. And for far too long, I think we've let go to the procurement teams, and we've got to work in collaboration with the procurement teams. I'm on my soapbox now, sorry.
I agree, it's fine. I was enjoying that, it's all right.
Can I add? Sorry,
Okay.
can I add to
View
that?
on all of these standards, but that's a different matter entirely.
Just
Go on,
quick,
you've
just
got a
quick.
right to reply. Go on, you're in the dock.
I'd be remiss if I didn't represent the digital side. So BS 8536, it's a British standard, not an ISO. But that's design, manufacture and construction for operability, I think is its title. So if you're looking at making your FM model more digitally literate, then that would be a very strong place to start. I'm not disagreeing with the words that have been said elsewhere, but I would add to the management system standard, they're all built on the same architecture. So 41,001 should connect you to things like 27,001 for information security and 9,001 for quality management and so on and so forth.
And if you want to get involved in standards, have a chat with these guys in the break.
Thank you.
Because you might have guessed, I'm not really one for rules, but I have been involved in doing the BSI new standard that's just gone to public consultation at the moment on workplace strategy. And it has been really fascinating process. It's the first time I've got involved in standards because I'm not one for rules and bureaucracy, to be honest. Kills me a little bit. But yeah, it's actually been really enjoyable and it won't hopefully be the last one I'm doing. So.